The deepest wounds are often invisible, like underground rivers flowing beneath the surface. They silently shape our lives without anyone knowing. Dear grandchildren, when you look at me today, an old woman with gray hair, wrinkled skin, and calloused hands, you probably cannot imagine that I was once a small, fragile girl, abandoned by the whole world. These eyes have shed so many tears that it seemed there was nothing left to cry. And this heart was broken many times before learning to be strong. After 75 years of life, I've understood that life is not a fairy tale. There is no prince on a white horse coming to rescue the princess. No magic to turn weeds into roses. But the most miraculous thing I've witnessed is human strength, the ability to rise from ashes, the capacity to love after betrayal, and the power to forgive when every reason points toward hatred. Some memories, no matter how much time passes, remain as vivid as if they happened yesterday. I still remember clearly the day my father sold me when I was just 12 years old. Still a child running barefoot on hot ground. Still making rag dolls from scraps of fabric my mother used for sewing. You know, the worst pain isn't being hurt by strangers, but when your own flesh and blood turns their back on you, selling you like merchandise. There were times when I thought I would never recover. Times when I wanted to give up everything. But life taught me a precious lesson. No one is born with a predetermined fate. We can always be stronger than what others impose upon us. And if you think you have seen suffering in this life, sit down and listen to grandmother's story. Because what I have endured, my child, I wouldn't wish even upon my enemies. But before I continue, if you want to learn more about historical testimonies and stories that teach us about resilience, social justice, and American history, please subscribe to the Grandparents' Memories channel and hit the like button. Your support helps us preserve and share these important educational stories for future generations to learn from. My story begins on a fateful day in a makeshift house in rural Georgia where I lived with my parents in poverty. One morning I woke up and felt something was wrong. There was no smell of coffee in the air, no sound of mother bustling with pots and pans, no sound of father leaving early for work. Everything was strange. When I entered the living room, I saw two men sitting at the table. One I knew, the tavern owner where my father often drank on credit, and a stranger, a well-dressed white man with eyes that made me tremble. In those days, life was already hard, but I didn't understand the extent of the poverty that surrounded us. We lived in a dilapidated trailer in rural Georgia with a patched roof and dirt floor. I shared a thin mattress with my mother in one corner while my father Walter Johnson slept alone, snoring heavily after drinking himself into a stupor. He was always a dry man of few words and many vices. He worked from sunrise to sunset, but there was never money left over. My mother, Harriet Johnson, was different. She lived with her head down, but was affectionate with me. She never raised her voice, but her eyes always told me everything her mouth didn't say. That day, I woke up with a tightness in my chest. There was no smell of coffee in the air, no sound of mother moving pots and pans, no noise of father leaving early for work. Everything felt strange. I got up slowly, and when I stepped into the living room, I saw two men sitting at the table. One I knew, Clint Baxter, the owner of the tavern where my father drank on credit. The other was a stranger, a well-dressed white man with a look that made me tremble. My father was there too, holding a glass of bourbon, and my mother was huddled in a corner of the kitchen, crying softly. I don't have money, but I have the girl. I froze. What was he talking about? My heart raced. I looked at my mother, seeking an explanation, but all I saw was the pain on her face. My entire body went cold. I wanted to run, scream, escape from there, but my legs wouldn't obey. The stranger stood up and came to me. He ran his eyes over me from top to bottom, as if evaluating merchandise. Small but strong, she'll do. The deal is done. With this, the debt is paid. My mother let out a sob. I ran to her, grabbed her skirt, and began to cry. Mama, for God's sake, say something. Tell me it's not true. But she just held my face between her hands, her eyes full of tears. Forgive me, my child, was the last thing I heard before the man pulled me by the arm. The journey to hell. I fought, kicked, and screamed as he dragged me outside. The last image I had was of my mother kneeling on the floor, crying, while my father poured another glass of bourbon. I was thrown into a pickup truck. My heart was beating erratically, my mind trying to understand, but everything was happening too fast. The sun burned my skin. Dust got in my eyes. And that man, Victor Hawkins, I later learned, held the steering wheel as if nothing was happening. Where are you taking me? I asked, my voice choked. He laughed. You'll know soon enough. I trembled from head to toe. Fear gripped my chest. I knew my life would never be the same. The truck bounced along the dirt road, raising dust and choking my throat. My heart was beating so hard, I felt it would jump out of my chest. He just drove the truck, whistling a tune that gave me chills. I wanted to ask where he was taking me, but fear locked my mouth. I already understood that my opinion meant nothing. The tears burned in my throat, but I held them back. I had cried enough, and from the looks of things, from now on, no one would care about my tears. Red Velvet House. After a few hours, the truck stopped in front of a large building unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was a two-story house with a long porch full of rocking chairs. The paint was peeling, and the open windows revealed red curtains fluttering in the wind. I was thrown into a pickup truck. My heart was beating erratically, my mind trying to understand, but everything was happening too fast. The sun burned my skin. Dust got in my eyes. And that man, Victor Hawkins, I later learned, held the steering wheel as if nothing was happening. Where are you taking me? I asked, my voice choked. He laughed. You'll know soon enough. I trembled from head to toe. Fear gripped my chest. I knew my life would never be the same. The truck bounced along the dirt road, raising dust and choking my throat. My heart was beating so hard, I felt it would jump out of my chest. He just drove the truck, whistling a tune that gave me chills. I wanted to ask where he was taking me, but fear locked my mouth. I already understood that my opinion meant nothing. The tears burned in my throat, but I held them back. I had cried enough, and from the looks of things, from now on, no one would care about my tears. Red Velvet House. After a few hours, the truck stopped in front of a large building unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was a two-story house with a long porch full of rocking chairs. The paint was peeling, and the open windows revealed red curtains fluttering in the wind. Inside, a strong smell of cheap perfume mixed with liquor filled my nostrils. The walls were covered with colorful fabrics, and the floor creaked with each step. There were women everywhere. Some sitting on worn sofas, laughing loudly with drunk men, others dancing in the middle of the room in skimpy clothing with forced smiles. "This is the new one," said the man, throwing my arm forward. A woman emerged from the back of the room. She was tall, slim, and had her hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore a shiny blue dress and had a face heavy with powder and red lipstick. Her eyes examined me with an expression I couldn't decipher. "Tiny thing, huh? But she has structure. She'll bring in money. She's all yours, Madame Vivian." I felt a knot form in my stomach. She tossed a cloth bag into his hand. He opened it, counted the money, and smiled with satisfaction. He gave me one last look of contempt, and left as if he had just sold an animal at the fair. "And where am I going?" My voice came out weak but firm. Madame Vivian looked me up and down. "Wherever I tell you to." She turned her back and started up the stairs. I stood there not knowing what to do. My whole body was trembling, but I didn't want to cry in front of those women. That's when I felt a hand on my shoulder. "Come here, girl." It was a woman with brown skin and long hair. Her voice was different, without malice. I followed her down a narrow hallway. She opened a door and pushed me into a small room where there was only a bed and an old dresser. "This will be your corner. Better rest because tomorrow your life changes for good." "I don't want to stay here," I whispered. She looked at me with pity. "None of us wanted to, girl, but wanting doesn't change anything." She closed the door and I curled up on the hard mattress, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what awaited me, but one thing was certain: I was trapped. I remembered how my mother had taught me to read from old newspapers and worn-out books she'd find. It wasn't much, but it was something to hold on to. That in the quietest moments at the brothel, I would practice writing letters in the dust under my bed, determined not to forget what little education I had. If I was going to survive this place, I would need every skill I possessed. That night, I didn't sleep. The mattress was thin and smelly. The smell of cheap perfume permeated the walls, and the screams and laughter from the salon reminded me every moment that I wasn't dreaming. This was real. Early the next morning, the door swung open suddenly. It was the same woman from the day before, the one who had looked at me with pity. "Get up, girl. No time for dawdling." I got up slightly dizzy, my body aching from the journey and from fear. "My name is Sophia Williams," she said, crossing her arms. "And you?" My voice caught in my throat. It was the first time anyone there had asked my name as if it mattered. "Rose," I said. She clicked her tongue against her teeth. "Well then, Rose, listen carefully. The sooner you learn the rules around here, the better for you. You'll wash floors, clean rooms, help in the kitchen, and you'll have to learn to behave properly when clients are around. Madame Vivian doesn't like rebellious girls." I clenched my fists. "I want to leave." Sophia let out a short laugh without humor. "Nobody wants to stay here, but you only leave when Madame Vivian allows it." A weight fell on my chest. My eyes filled with tears, but I swallowed the crying. I had already learned that the less weakness I showed, the better. I was taken to the kitchen, where other girls were already in aprons, stirring pots and cutting vegetables. The smell of food was strong, and my stomach growled. A short, fat woman with a face marked by time pointed to a pile of dirty dishes. "Go on, girl. Stop there." I washed plate after plate without saying anything. My hands became wrinkled and full of soap, but it was better to be there than in the salon. At least no one looked at me in a strange way. At least there I was still just a girl washing dishes. But the peace didn't last long. Later, Madame Vivian called me to her room. I trembled from head to toe, but went. She was sitting in an armchair, fanning her face with a golden fan. "So, Rose, how was your first day?" I swallowed hard. "I worked in the kitchen." She smiled, but it wasn't a real smile. "It's a start, but you know that's not what you came here for, right?" My blood froze. I can stay in the kitchen. I know how to cook. I know how to clean." She laughed, fanning herself harder. "Oh, my dear, you still don't understand. Nobody chooses anything here." She got up and approached slowly. "And there's something else. You're not like the other girls here." I stood still, feeling my body go numb. "You don't have that sweetness that sells well, and that dark skin and hard face." She said it as if I were a defective object, something of lesser value. My eyes burned, but I held firm. "There are clients who like exotic," she continued, looking at my hands. "But there are others who prefer the common. It will be harder to find a place for you." I wanted to disappear. I wanted to scream, but I just stood there silent, holding the hatred in my chest. In the following days, I realized she was right. The other girls looked at me sideways, whispered when I passed by. The clients analyzed me as if I were a different piece, something they didn't know if they wanted or not. And when they noticed me, it wasn't in a good way. "Looks like they brought in a runaway slave," I heard a man say one night, laughing with another. I felt my face burn, but I continued serving drinks as ordered. I couldn't respond. I couldn't look angry. Madame Vivian had already warned that if I caused trouble, I would pay dearly. And so went the first months, working, hearing insults, swallowing tears. Each day that passed, I felt a piece of me disappearing. But deep down, way down, I kept a certainty. This wouldn't be forever. I would get out of there, even if it was the last thing I did. By the time I planned my escape, I had turned 15. 3 long years had passed since my father sold me. 3 years of a childhood stolen that I would never get back. But I was determined that the rest of my life would be mine to control. Time inside that place seemed to move differently. The days dragged on slowly, heavily, but the months passed in the blink of an eye. Before I knew it, almost 3 years had gone by, trapped in that hell. I was 15 now, no longer the confused child who arrived here, but a young woman with hardened eyes and calloused hands. The routine was always the same: wake up early, wash the salon floor, clean the rooms after the clients left, help in the kitchen, and serve drinks to the girls and the men who frequented the establishment. I did everything silently, without raising my head, without giving Madame Vivian reason to punish me. I learned early that any slip cost dearly. That woman had a cruel way of commanding. She didn't shout, didn't hit in front of everyone. But when she thought someone needed it, she made a point of showing who was in charge. Once one of the girls tried to escape. She didn't even reach the corner when they brought her back. Madame Vivian locked the poor thing in a room for 3 days without food or water. After that, no one tried anything. But I knew that one day I would leave. I didn't know how or when, but the idea never left my head. Meanwhile, I just survived. Besides being the youngest, I was the only black person there. That made a difference. It didn't take long for me to realize that I had a different price from the others. When Madame Vivian said I wasn't like the other girls, she meant I was less. At first, she tried to push me to clients the way she did with the others. But the white men turned up their noses. Some made jokes, others didn't even look at me. "This isn't a plantation for me to pay for a colored girl," one of them shouted once, laughing with his friends. I was serving drinks at the time, and trembled from head to toe, but I did, as always, lowered my head and pretended not to hear. Madame Vivian didn't like the difficulty of selling me, so she used me for other things. I cleaned more, worked more, and slept less than all the others there. She made me serve the drunkest clients, the ones no one wanted to attend to. "You have to make money somehow," she would say. But there were some who liked me, and those were the worst. The ones who arrived saying they had never been with a black woman before, that they wanted to try. They talked to me in a disgusting way, looked at me as if I were an exotic object. Sophia was the only one who tried to help me. She didn't talk much, but when she could, she would take the weight off my shoulders. If she saw I was exhausted, she would take over my part of the cleaning. If she noticed a client was going to be worse with me, she tried to get me out of there. But it didn't always work. One night, after an especially rough day, she sat next to me in the small hallway where our rooms were. "You have to learn to protect yourself, Rose. Close your heart. Pretend you don't feel. We don't have a choice." I closed my eyes. I wanted so badly to believe she was wrong, but I knew she wasn't. The months passed and I learned to be quiet, to swallow my tears, to endure. But inside, I never accepted it. I observed everything, recorded every detail, every gap, every conversation. It was on one of those nights, serving drinks in the salon, that I heard something that made me feel the first spark of hope. Two clients were talking at the bar, laughing loudly, already half drunk. They were talking about a new road that had been opened on the other side of town. "Now it's easier to get to the bus station," one of them commented. My heart raced. I had never thought about where I would go if I managed to escape from there. But the idea of a bus station lit a light in my head. If I could get there, maybe I could find a bus, a way to disappear from the city, to vanish for good. I just needed to find an opportunity, and I knew that sooner or later it would appear. Time went on, and that idea of the bus station kept hammering in my head. I knew that escaping wouldn't be easy. With each escape attempt I saw fail, the certainty that the risk was great grew inside me. Madame Vivian didn't forgive, but I wasn't going to die in that place. I began to observe everything more carefully. The schedules, who came in, who went out, the moments when the doors were unlocked. I knew that escaping at night was impossible. The red velvet house never slept. But early in the morning, when the girls were still in their rooms and the men were leaving, staggering, the movement was less. The problem was getting out without anyone noticing. That's when a new opportunity appeared. On a stuffy night, while I was cleaning a corner of the salon, a different man entered the brothel. He wasn't like the others. He wore a well-cut suit, had attentive eyes, and a serious air. He sat at the bar, ordered a drink, and stayed there observing everything. I later learned his name was Thomas Green, a traveling businessman with connections throughout the state. He didn't laugh loudly, didn't call the girls over, just listened. Madame Vivian noticed and went to talk to him, smiling as she always did when someone important appeared. "It's been a long time since I've seen you around here," she said, serving him another drink. He smiled slightly. "Business brought me back. I was curious." Businessmen didn't usually frequent this place, at least not with that posture. Sophia appeared by my side and whispered, "That one's dangerous folk. Travels around, bringing things from outside. They say he has contacts at the bus station." My heart raced. Bus station. Instinctively, I looked at him. At the same moment, the man's eyes met mine. He frowned, analyzing me in a different way. I quickly bent down, pretending to fix the floor, but my heart was beating so hard it seemed everyone in the salon could hear it. If that man had contacts at the bus station, he could be my chance. I waited for the salon to empty. When I saw that he was getting up to leave, I ran to Sophia. "I need to talk to him." She looked at me as if I had gone crazy. "You want to die?" "If Madame Vivian catches you messing with an outside man, she'll lock you in a room and throw away the key." "I know, but it's my only chance." She sighed, pulled me by the arm, and looked me right in the eyes. "Are you willing to risk everything?" I nodded. "Everything." She closed her eyes for a moment, then let out a long sigh. "Then go quickly." I left through the corridor and followed the man who was just stepping onto the sidewalk. He turned slowly, analyzing me. "You wanted something?" I swallowed hard. "I need to get out of here. I know you have contacts at the bus station. Help me." He raised an eyebrow, then laughed without humor. "You know what you're asking, girl?" "I do." He looked me up and down, then sighed. "This isn't child's play. People die trying to escape this kind of life. Then I'd rather die trying than rot here." He was silent for a time, then looked around as if checking if anyone was watching. "I had a sister once," he said quietly. "She ended up in a place like this. No one helped her." His eyes met mine with fierce intensity. "The bus leaves in 3 days at dawn. I can get you on it, but you need to find a way to get there by yourself." My chest filled with hope and fear at the same time. "I'll make it." He nodded. Then be smart and don't tell anyone. I knew he was right, but hiding this from Sophia was impossible. That night, I lay on the hard bed in my little room and stared at the ceiling. 3 days. 3 days to get rid of that hell. I planned everything. How I would leave without making noise. How I would take one of the simplest dresses from the brothel to try to blend in the city. The night before my escape, Sophia pulled me aside. Are you sure you want to do this? It's my only chance. She took a deep breath, then held my hand. Then I'll help you. I'll distract Madame Vivian at the right time. But you need to run. My heart ached. I knew that if they discovered she had helped me, she would pay dearly. Sophia! Shut up. Just promise it will work. I promise. She squeezed my hand. And that night, for the first time in a long time, I slept dreaming of freedom. Freedom. I woke up before the sun gave any sign in the sky. My heart seemed like a drum beating strongly in my chest. It wasn't fear. It was something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. I got up slowly, feeling my bones heavy from so many years of exhaustion. But this time, each movement had a purpose. I took the simplest dress I could find, tied my hair in the most discreet way possible, and put on the worn sandals I used to clean the salon. Sophia met me at the door of my little room. She didn't say anything, just handed me a piece of bread and a small bundle of cloth with some food. Go before I change my mind, she whispered. Thank you, I replied, feeling a lump in my throat. She didn't smile, just turned her back and returned to the dark corridor of the brothel. I took a deep breath. It was now or never. The house was still asleep. The girls in their rooms exhausted from the night before. Madame Vivian locked in her office, counting money. The guard leaning against the wall, dozing off. I passed through the corridor without making a sound, holding my breath. Each floorboard creaked differently, and I knew exactly where to step to avoid making noise. When I reached the back door, I placed my hand on the doorknob and closed my eyes for a second. I turned it slowly without rush, without desperation. The wood groaned softly, but nothing that would draw attention. I slipped through the crack in the door, feeling the cold morning wind hit my face. I was out, but I wasn't free yet. I walked as quickly as I could without seeming like I was running away. The city was just waking up. Drunk men stumbling through the streets, early rising workers passing by, setting up their stalls, cats rummaging through trash in search of food. The bus station was far, a good few minutes' walk away, but I had time. The bus would leave at dawn. At each corner I turned, my heart tightened. I felt Madame Vivian's gaze following me, even knowing she hadn't yet noticed my escape. I passed through a small square and saw a group of men talking. I tried to avoid them, but one of them noticed me. Hey, brown girl. You alone at this hour? I ignored him and kept walking. Huh? Running away from home. The man laughed but didn't follow me. I continued on, swallowing my fear. I'd been through worse. This wouldn't stop me. When I finally saw the first sign of the bus station, my heart leaped. The bus must be right there waiting for me. But then I heard a shout that tore through the dawn. The colored girl ran off. My body froze. My blood turned to ice in my veins. It was Madame Vivian's voice. I knew she wouldn't let it go easily. I started to run. I didn't care anymore if anyone saw me, if I looked suspicious. I just needed to reach the bus. Feet pounding hard on the cobblestone ground, heavy breathing, the wind cutting my face. Behind me, hurried footsteps. I didn't look back. I couldn't waste time. The bus station was my last chance. The smell of diesel grew stronger. The sound of engines mixed with the shouts of men loading luggage. The station was a chaos of people coming and going. But I was only looking for one thing, the bus. I looked desperately in all directions. That's when I saw him. The man from the brothel, the one who had promised to help me. He was near the bus ramp talking to another man. When he saw me, his eyes widened. Girl, run. I threw my body forward with everything I had left. The footsteps behind me got closer. I heard cursing, heard Madame Vivian screaming, "Catch that wretch!" The man pulled me by the arm at the last second. "Get up." I grabbed the rope and climbed onto the vehicle. The other man shouted something, and suddenly the ramp was pulled away. The bus began to move. I looked back, my chest rising and falling. Madame Vivian was at the edge of the station, looking at me with hatred in her eyes. "You'll die in misery, colored girl. Nobody wants you." The bus moved on, and for the first time in years, I smiled. I was free. The wind hit my face, carrying away the dirty smell of the brothel. I closed my eyes for a moment and let the fresh air stick to my skin as if each breath was washing away the years of suffering. But freedom was still a new taste, a taste I was afraid to believe was mine. The bus swayed to the rhythm of the road, and I held on to the handrail. My legs were still trembling, my heart pounding in my chest. And I didn't know if it was from fear or relief. The man who helped me stood with his arms crossed, analyzing me. "You caused trouble." I took a deep breath, trying to calm my breathing. "I couldn't stay there anymore." He nodded as if he already knew. "Do you have somewhere to go?" The question caught me off guard. I swallowed hard. "I don't know." He sighed and looked at the horizon. "This bus is going to another city far from here. When we arrive, you'll be on your own." Fear began to spread through my chest again. I didn't know anyone. Didn't have money, didn't have a place to sleep, but I had one thing no one could take from me, my will to live. The bus arrived in the morning. The city was different. Wide streets, tall buildings, movement everywhere. A smell of fresh bread mixed with cold smoke filled the air. I got off the bus and stood at the edge of the platform, not knowing where to go. The world seemed too big and I felt small, lost. That's when I felt a gaze upon me. A black woman like me was watching me from a distance. She wore a simple dress and carried a basket of fruit on her head. When our eyes met, she made a discreet gesture with her head as if recognizing someone from the same path. I swallowed hard and approached. "Good morning," I said, not knowing exactly how to start. She looked me up and down, narrowing her eyes. "Running away from where, girl?" My body froze. Could everyone see on my face that I was a fugitive? My voice failed. "I just need a job." She was silent for a moment, then pointed with her chin ahead. "There's a market over there. If you want to help unload trucks, you can earn some change." That was it. A chance. "Thank you, ma'am." She didn't smile, but gave a slight nod before continuing on her way. I arrived at the market, still not knowing what to expect. The smell of fruit and fresh fish was strong, and the shouts of the vendors filled the air. "Sweet oranges, folks. Fish cheap, it's fresh." A man with a big belly and thick mustache was unloading sacks of potatoes from a truck. "Need help?" I asked, approaching. He looked me up and down. "Can you handle weight?" "I can." He laughed, skeptical, but threw a sack of potatoes on the ground. "Then carry this one to Mr. Joe's stall. If you can manage, there's more." I picked up the sack and threw it over my shoulder. It was heavy, but I had carried much worse burdens in life. I carried it, feeling the gaze of some vendors on me. I don't know if it was because I was new there or because I was black, but I was used to that kind of look. The stall owner, a thin man with small eyes, saw me arrive and pointed to the place where I should leave the sack. Strong, huh? I didn't respond. Just went back to the truck to get the next one. I worked like that all morning. At the end of the day, the truck man gave me some coins and a piece of bread. If you show up tomorrow, there might be more. I thanked him and left. Now I had to find a place to sleep. I walked through the city until my legs couldn't take it anymore. I sat in a corner of the square and ate the bread slowly. The hunger was great, but I wanted to make it last. Night fell and the cold came with it. I hugged my own body, huddled against the wall of a building. The icy wind cut my skin and the hard ground made my bones ache. But you know something? It was still better than the bed in the brothel. I was free. Even cold, hungry, not knowing about tomorrow, I was free. I closed my eyes and made a promise to myself. I would survive. I would win. And one day, no one would look at me as a poor thing again. That night, I slept with the starry sky above me and the whole world ahead. I woke up with the sun hitting my face and the noise of the city already awake. My bones ached from the hard ground of the square. But I was alive, and that was already more than I could say about many nights in the red velvet house. I got up, shook the dust off my dress, and went straight to the market. The truck man looked at me out of the corner of his eye when I arrived, but gave a nod with his head. Still want to work? I do. He pointed with his chin to the sacks of potatoes piled up. Then start now because today there's a lot to unload. I threw the first sack over my shoulder and started the job without complaining. The weight seemed to want to bend me, but I only thought of one thing. If I stopped now, I wouldn't have anything to eat later. Time passed and the market turned into a whirlwind of people. Vendors shouted their offers. Customers haggled. Children ran between the stalls. In the midst of all this chaos, I began to notice gazes upon me. It wasn't just curiosity. It was that look I had known since I was little. The look of those who saw me as different, as less. Dark skin had always been a problem for others, never for me. But it was there, far from everything I had known, that I began to understand the size of this problem. At the end of the day, after hours of heavy work, the truck owner threw me some coins and a piece of cheese. You work well, he said. Thank you. But there are people around who don't like seeing a black woman occupying space. Better be careful. I swallowed hard. I always am. He gave a laugh as if he knew I understood how the world works. I took my coins and went to a small store. The smell of fresh bread made me remember the breakfast I never had. I bought some and a little milk, sat in a corner of the square, and ate while watching people passing by. That's when I felt a tap on my shoulder. Hi, Mississippi. I looked to the side and saw a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Braided hair, worn little dress, and a clever look. Hi. You're new around here, aren't you? I nodded, finishing chewing the bread. My mom says people who sleep on the street don't last long. I let out a short laugh. Your mom is right. She smiled and ran back to the fruit stall where a woman was watching me carefully. It was the same woman who had directed me to the market the other day. She analyzed me for a while and without saying anything went back to serving a customer. In the days that followed, I got used to the routine. Wake up early, go to the market, carry whatever needed carrying, earn some coins and a little food. People began to recognize me. Some still looked at me sideways. Others just ignored my existence. But that woman from the fruit stall, the one who helped me on the first day, began to observe me more until one afternoon, after seeing me washing my face at a public fountain, she called me over. What's your name, girl? Rose. She wiped her hands on her apron and pointed inside the stall. If you want, there is a small room in the back. It's not big, but it's better than the street. I felt a lump in my throat. And what does the lady want in return? Help at the stall. You know how to weigh fruit? I do. Then it's settled. Start tomorrow. That's how, without further ado, I got my first real place after escaping. The little room was small but had a simple bed and a small table. That night, I laid down and felt for the first time a roof over my head that didn't give me fear. Clara Davis was a blessing I never expected. As a black woman who had built her own business despite all the obstacles, she understood my struggles in a way few others could. We have to look out for each other, she told me one evening as we closed the stall. This world doesn't make anything easy for people like us. It was at that stall that my life began to change. And it was there too that I met someone who would change everything. The next morning, while I was organizing oranges, a young man appeared at the stall. Brown skin, lively eyes, easy smile. Good morning, Mrs. Clara. Good morning, Daniel, the woman replied while separating a bag of peaches for him. He looked at me out of the corner of his eye. And this young lady new around here? I took a deep breath. Rose. He smiled. Daniel Mitchell. Pleased to meet you. It was just a look, just an exchanged name. But at that moment, without even knowing it, I had just met the man who would change my story forever. The days went by and I got used to my new routine at Clara Davis's stall. It was simple work, but dignified. And for the first time in my life, I felt I had a place. The market had its own rhythm. Early in the morning, it was a rush, hurried customers picking up fruits and vegetables for the day. After lunch, the movement died down. And it was during these intervals that I began to notice something. Daniel always found a way to appear. He would arrive with that easy smile, by anything just to make conversation. Hot today, huh? He would say, picking up a peach. Not at all. I've seen worse. He would laugh. You're fierce, aren't you? I would just shake my head and continue with my work. But inside, I was already starting to like it. Daniel was different from the men I had met at the Red Velvet House. He didn't look at me with ulterior motives, didn't speak with mockery. He simply liked to talk. And I didn't quite know what to feel. After everything I'd been through, after so many years being treated as an object, the idea that someone could simply enjoy my company was something new. One afternoon after Daniel had left, Clara called me over. Rose, that young man is courting you, you know. I laughed, shaking my head. He just likes to talk. She crossed her arms. A man doesn't keep coming back every day just to talk. I sighed. Even if that were true, do you think someone like him would want something serious with someone like me? She looked me in the eyes. Serious? And why not? You're hardworking, honest. What happened before doesn't define you. I lowered my gaze. The world doesn't think that way. She sighed and ran her hand over my head as a mother would do. The world is full of bad people, Rose. But there are good ones, too. Just don't let your past steal your future. I thought about that for the rest of the day. The next day, Daniel appeared at the stall with a different smile. Today, I didn't come to buy anything, Mrs. Clara. Clara raised her eyebrows. And what did you come to do then? He looked at me. Rose, would you like to take a walk? I didn't know what to answer. Clara patted my shoulder. Go, girl. It's not every day you receive such invitations. I swallowed hard and nodded. We walked through the city and I felt strange. It had been years since I had gone out like this without fear, without rush. Daniel talked about everything and nothing. At the same time, he told stories from his childhood, talked about his plans to open his own store. And you, he asked suddenly, what do you want for your life? I stopped. No one had ever asked me that. I want to not be afraid of tomorrow." He smiled slightly. "That's a good start." We continued walking until we reached an open field where some children were playing ball. "Have you ever loved someone, Rose?" I felt my heart race. "I don't think so." He nodded thoughtfully. I think love is a choice. We don't just have to wait for it to happen. Sometimes we can decide to love." I looked at him confused. "And have you already chosen?" Daniel looked me in the eyes and smiled. "I think I'm choosing now." My heart beat faster, and for the first time in many years, I felt that maybe, just maybe, I could be truly loved. The months passed, and the friendship turned into something more. Daniel was patient, respected my pace, never rushed me, never made me feel less, until one day he appeared at Clara's stall more serious than usual. "Rose, can I talk to you?" We went to a corner, and he cleared his throat before continuing. "I like you very much, but I want more than that. I want to build a life together." I was speechless. "Are you asking me to be your girlfriend?" He laughed. "I'm asking you to marry me." My throat went dry. "But Daniel, I'm not a woman to marry." He frowned. "Who said that?" "Everyone." He held my hands. "I don't care what the world says. I know who you are, and I want you with me." My eyes filled with tears. There at that moment, I saw that the past might have been cruel, but the future was in my hands. And for the first time, I chose to believe in love. I was 17 when Daniel proposed to me. Still young, but with eyes that had seen too much. We married 6 months later on my 18th birthday, a new beginning on the anniversary of my birth. Life with Daniel was everything I never imagined I would have. In the beginning, I still carried that fear, that feeling that at any moment everything would fall apart. But he was patient. He showed me that love wasn't just pretty words. It was choice. It was building together. We got married on a late afternoon in the small chapel of the city. Clara Davis was my maid of honor, and I wore a light blue dress that she herself had sewn. There was no big party, no music playing loudly, but there was something I never had before, a home. After the wedding, Daniel managed to rent a small apartment for us. A modest place, but it was ours. And there under that simple roof, our family began. First came Catherine in 1943, my firstborn, whom we called Kate. When I held that little girl in my arms for the first time, I cried so much I thought I would never stop. It was as if each tear washed away a piece of my past. I was just 19 years old, terrified, but determined to give her everything I never had. Then came Jennifer 2 years later, our Jenny, a bundle of energy who had barely learned to walk before she was running all over the house. And finally in 1947, Elizabeth, our Lizzie, my youngest, who came to close our nest with a golden key when I was 23. With each child I had, I understood more about love, what it was to give, what it was to receive, what it was to fear for someone who came from inside you. But above all, I learned that I didn't need to be just what they had made me. I could be more. I could be a mother, a wife, a woman, all at the same time. And so life followed its course. And so life followed its course. The years passed, my daughters grew up, and I remained strong. But I never forgot what I went through. There were days when the memories would crash over me like waves. A certain smell, a particular sound, or a phrase someone said could transport me back to that hellish place in an instant. Daniel noticed these moments, the way my eyes would go distant and my hands would tremble. He never pushed, never demanded I explain, just quietly held my hand until I returned to the present. "You're here now," he would whisper. "You're safe." And slowly, I began to believe it. Some nights I still woke up frightened with bad dreams pulling me back to the past. I never hid my story from my girls. When they were little, I just told it broadly without details. But as they grew up, I began to share more. I wanted them to know where they came from, the strength that ran in their blood. But Mom, how could someone sell their own daughter? Kate asked one day, outraged. Because sometimes desperation makes good people do bad things, honey. But that's unforgivable. I sighed. I don't know if it is, but I know that holding on to hatred doesn't change anything. They listened to me, each in her own way, and so my story became part of them, too. Time passed a little more and made me a grandmother. 3 grandchildren, each with their own little way, each bringing more joy to my house. Looking back on the path I've traveled, I see my life like a river, sometimes churning through rapids, sometimes flowing quietly through fertile plains. From a 12-year-old girl who was sold away to a woman who found freedom, then becoming a wife, a mother, and finally a grandmother. Each journey has left me with both scars and gifts. But my children, it is these very scars that have created the strength I possess today. Sometimes I still wonder if I should forgive the father who sold me. But then I realize that forgiveness isn't about forgetting, but about not allowing that pain to continue gnawing at my soul. I forgive not because he deserves it, but because I deserve to live in peace. My 3 daughters grew up believing that the past doesn't determine the future, and that belief has helped them build beautiful lives of their own. Daniel, the man who saw value in me when the world only saw my skin color and my past, taught me that true love isn't sweet words, but a daily choice. The choice to stay, the choice to trust, the choice to build. And we built a home where our 3 daughters never had to know the fear that I experienced. And so life followed its course. The years passed, my daughters grew up, and I remained strong. But I never forgot what I went through. There were days when the memories would crash over me like waves. A certain smell, a particular sound, or a phrase someone said could transport me back to that hellish place in an instant. Daniel noticed these moments, the way my eyes would go distant and my hands would tremble. He never pushed, never demanded I explain, just quietly held my hand until I returned to the present. "You're here now," he would whisper. "You're safe." And slowly, I began to believe it. Some nights I still woke up frightened with bad dreams pulling me back to the past. I never hid my story from my girls. When they were little, I just told it broadly without details. But as they grew up, I began to share more. I wanted them to know where they came from, the strength that ran in their blood. But Mom, how could someone sell their own daughter? Kate asked one day, outraged. Because sometimes desperation makes good people do bad things, honey. But that's unforgivable. I sighed. I don't know if it is, but I know that holding on to hatred doesn't change anything. They listened to me, each in her own way, and so my story became part of them, too. Time passed a little more and made me a grandmother. 3 grandchildren, each with their own little way, each bringing more joy to my house. Looking back on the path I've traveled, I see my life like a river, sometimes churning through rapids, sometimes flowing quietly through fertile plains. From a 12-year-old girl who was sold away to a woman who found freedom, then becoming a wife, a mother, and finally a grandmother. Each journey has left me with both scars and gifts. But my children, it is these very scars that have created the strength I possess today. Sometimes I still wonder if I should forgive the father who sold me. But then I realize that forgiveness isn't about forgetting, but about not allowing that pain to continue gnawing at my soul. I forgive not because he deserves it, but because I deserve to live in peace. My 3 daughters grew up believing that the past doesn't determine the future, and that belief has helped them build beautiful lives of their own. Daniel, the man who saw value in me when the world only saw my skin color and my past, taught me that true love isn't sweet words, but a daily choice. The choice to stay, the choice to trust, the choice to build. And we built a home